It's interesting when you first see them. You don't know how to react. It's been so long. The brother you knew 40 years ago. A lot of thoughts will come back from that time. Of us together.
This sound symbolized the Vietnam era. The slapping blades of the Bell UH-1 Huey helicopter. It was utilitarian. The Huey was designed to transport multiple occupants. Flying over Vietnam, the hot, humid air rushed and whistled loudly through its large cabin space. It was adaptable. Load a Huey with supplies and it was a transport ship. Load it with the wounded and it was an air ambulance. Used for troop transport, Hueys were called slicks. Hang some rocket pods and miniguns and the Hueys were called gunships. It was resilient, navigating through vast jungle, mountain terrain, or rice paddies. It could hover over risky terrain and enemy territory to insert troops or conduct search and rescue missions, sometimes with only door-mounted machine guns for protection. It was iconic. It became the symbol of U.S. combat forces fighting Vietnam. With its strong and reliable jet turbine engine, the Huey quickly earned a reputation for dependability and proved itself to be the best-equipped helicopter to execute this new style of combat, the helicopter war. Before the end of the conflict, more than 7,000 Hueys were used in Vietnam, but the cost was high. Nearly half were lost during the conflict. More Hueys were downed in Vietnam than any other type of aircraft. This is the story of one particular Huey and the 4 young men that it brought together for 6 months in 1970. Together they tested their strength, fortitude, and courage. Transcending the hazards and heartache of war, they formed an inexplicable bond with themselves and their helicopter.
I went in the Army at the age of 18 and found out I could fly helicopters. It was one of those weird things, is when I was about 10 or 11 years old, got dragged to the library by my mother, and I got a book on helicopters. Don't know why, I've never had any interest or anything else, got one of those, and then when I heard the opportunity to go fly helicopters in the Army, all you had to do is be 18 and a high school graduate. Enlisted in the Army in the spring of '68 and went to basic training and then pilot training, and graduated pilot training in July of '69, right after the first guy walked on the moon. 30 days later, got dumped off a little air base called Soc Trang. Down in the Delta, had no clue what it was, where I was. Shortly being there for a short period of time, remember we had our first mortar attack. I had heard the sirens go off and a few whoomp whoomps and a few explosions, but okay, well, it's time to take a shower because it's getting close to bedtime. I grab my towel, my flip-flops, and head down to the shower. And somebody says, "Where are you going? You're supposed to be in a bunker." Taking a shower. Well, got yelled at, and then from then on, there was no big deal. Spent all my time flying. Every day as much as I could, whenever I could. About 3 months into country, I became an aircraft commander. I was 19 years old. I was really proud of myself, taking my own helicopter out with a crew. I was also trained to be the flight lead, to lead the helicopters in on the missions, and we had our platoon. So it'd be 10 pilots, 5 crew chiefs, 5 door gunners, and then the one who was really in charge was our platoon commander, John Leandro, and he would fly in the trail position. As we flew, I would be in the front navigating, find us in and out of the LZs or picking up the troops. He was in the back where he could direct and call certain things if we needed to abort a mission or whatnot. We always flew together in that formation to haul troops in and out. Tom Feigl, our crew chief, we started flying together other missions because not only did we have a night mission, we also had to fly the combat assaults. Vietnamese didn't like to spend the night out in the jungle, which I don't blame them.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in fate, especially when you're in the military. Following basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, I was transferred to Fort Eustis, Virginia for a 10-week helicopter repairman course. This would be a prerequisite to crew chief. The role of the crew chief is aircraft maintenance, keeping the logs up, keep the maintenance up on the aircraft, but when you're in the air, you're also a door gunner. I arrived in country in October of 1969. I was assigned to the 336 SL helicopter company, and I was assigned to the hangar crew. And in the hangar, what you do is you repaired aircraft, pulled maintenance on aircraft, until I started flying in January of 1970. The airfield that we were operating off of in Soc Trang was actually built by the Japanese during World War II. It's the only hard surface runway south of Saigon. When I first started flying, I was flying combat assault missions, which would be troop insertions and extractions at the end of the day. We also supported the Navy SEALs off Seafloat. Their primary mission at that time was in support of the Phoenix program or Operation Bright Light missions. 336 SL helicopter had what was called the Warriors and the T-Birds. The Warriors were the slick helicopters. The T-Birds were the gunships. So when I left the hangar and became a crew chief, I was assigned to Warrior 2A, which was one of the oldest ships in the fleet. But it didn't matter, it was mine, and I started maintaining it right away. About a month later, I was given a new ship, tail number 16109. I was very proud. Now I have my own ship, and right away I started pulling maintenance on it. But it was a huge responsibility as well, because you had to maintain that helicopter and make sure that it was airworthy. Prior to flight, I always insisted on an aircraft commander doing a pre-flight inspection. Olson and I would actually walk around that aircraft and check everything. A lot of aircraft commanders didn't do that, but I insisted on it. You know, it's another set of eyes looking at the aircraft. Little did they know, every hour we flew in that aircraft, I worried. Did I do everything right? Did I maintain this aircraft to the best of my ability? But I worried every hour that aircraft was in the air because their lives are in my hands. We really were looking for a permanent crew member, door gunner. We knew Sandwith was available. I grabbed him and put him on the team. He was all business, very professional, and most important, he had a cool demeanor about him.
I can never remember being afraid when I was on a mission. When I climbed on that helicopter, nothing else ever came into my mind. My mission over there was armament. My specialty was the minigun, I was pretty doggone adept with the M60 also. Could tear it apart basically with my eyes closed and put it back together. I flew on CNC a dozen times and hooked up with any helicopter I could hook up with. When you get there, there are already door gunners and crew chiefs established. So if somebody's pulling duty somewhere, it was easy to get on. It was just hard getting a good gun to take with you because people treasured their M60s, you know, just like their wife. That's their baby, and that's what keeps them alive. The minigun was my baby. That was Little Richard. Little Richard was named after my spider monkey. He served us well. We would go out in the morning and we would always work on the helicopter. We would get anything done that needed to be done. I would work on the minigun. The barrels would come off every day. The feeder delinker would come apart, clean it, grease it, put everything back together, dry run it, make sure everything worked well. It was important because when we went out, we always went out as a single ship. Because if we lost our firepower, we lost our edge, because that's what we did.
It was Olson, Samwith, and myself. And we were flying on a regular basis. We were flying mostly combat assault missions, which is the group of helicopters, putting troops in, pulling troops out. We were also doing SEAL Team 1 operations, which was in support of Operation Bright Light. And we did some daytime recon for the outpost and some night flying at the same time.
Tom was definitely like a big brother to me and took me under his wing and trusted me. And I think that trust grew very rapidly. And so we got to the point where we pretty much knew what each other was going to do.
Give a mission, we're going to do it. It doesn't matter what, we're going to do it.
The three of us worked very well together, and knowing we had somebody of his caliber was very important. All the helicopters in Vietnam had nose art. It was very similar to the aircraft in World War II. Those aircraft had nose art as well. It was thought that this was good luck, and it also represented the character of the aircraft. So every Huey helicopter in Vietnam had their nose art painted in some way or fashion. And after I got the ship, I started thinking about the nose art. I know I wanted the names, but what was the character of the aircraft? What's this nose art going to represent? I was going through a newspaper one day called Stars and Stripes. And there inside was a depiction of a cartoonish GI in fatigues. I said, that's it right there. That's the artwork I'm going to use. Tore out the page. I added Warrior 2-1 to it to represent Warrior 2-1 of the 2nd Flight Platoon. We added the names. I took the nose cover off, took it downtown to a very talented Vietnamese artist who did a perfect rendering of that GI on the nose art. We brought that nose art back, put it on the ship, and that nose art remained on the ship until May of 1970. We were conducting combat assaults in Kamau, which is west of Soc Trang. We were putting troops in, troop insertions. The ships were coming under a lot of fire. A lot of ships were taking hits. We were the last one out of the LZ. I knew we had taken multiple hits. The master caution on the helicopter was flashing like a Christmas tree. One of those AK-47 rounds came through the ship and actually hit me in the back. I laid there on the floor of the aircraft as we made our way back to the pickup zone. I wasn't sure how bad I was hit. We got back to the pickup zone, and we had found that the flak vest had captured most of the fragments from the bullet and from the aircraft. My door gunner was able to take some of the larger pieces out at the time. We were leaking some fuel, but it wasn't enough to stop us, and we made another insertion of troops before we then headed back to Soc Trang. I was down for a week because of my back, and the helicopter was down for a week because of the repairs.
You know, this was not a normal mission. This was a mission that was extremely dangerous, extremely important, but extremely dangerous. And it took a certain group of men to do this.
They were the night ship at the time. Their call sign was Lucky Strike. And they were out on patrol one night, and they had a chase ship that night. So there was a ship above them, supporting them. And there was an outpost under attack. So Lucky Strike flew in to support that outpost. And they were on the deck, they were blacked out, and when they approached the outpost, they were hit with a B-40 rocket. The ship exploded in midair and crashed, and all 6 on board were killed.
We went over the top of where strike went in, and there was just literally nothing left. There was a black hole in the ground.
They then scrambled off 3 gunships, which meant a heavy fire team for either rescue or recovery. The gunships got there and they engaged the enemy, and one of the gunships was shot down, killed the door gunner. The pilots and the crew chief were rescued.
I went in and pulled the crew out of that.
It was a rough night for 336. We lost 7 guys that night.
Just one of the worst days of my life, because all those guys, they belong to me.
I was scheduled to fly with Lucky Strike because Colin was getting ready to leave country. And about 2 or 3 hours prior to that, I got yanked out of the mission to go be a convoy commander, which is a really crappy little job. You ride in a Jeep in front of a convoy, drive 60, 70 miles up the road to get resupplies to bring all our food back for the week. I was mad. So, okay, but that's what I got stuck doing. And anyway, that's the night Lucky Strike didn't come back.
After losing Lucky Strike in February, our platoon leader, Captain Leandro, wanted a permanent crew to fly nights.
There was a group of guys called Super Slick, and Randy talked to me about it because Randy flew a lot of Super Slick, and he wanted to reinstitute, if you would, the Lucky Strike mission. And as reluctant as we were to do that, I went ahead and pushed Six. Six is the CO. Let's do that. Randy's smart. He knows what he's doing. We've got a good crew. Let's let them do what they do.
I was asked, would you take the call sign Lucky Strike? And I had too much respect for the guys, myself along with the crew. We said, no, we're not going to take that as the call sign. We're going to use Super Slick.
I had the phrase, "they were Lucky Strike," added to our nose art out of respect for that crew,
Along with 7 gold stars for the crew that was lost.
May was when we started working on a permanent night aircraft. So we were given the go-ahead and the resources to put together a Nighthawk system.
We found out somehow that if we went up to, I think it was Vung Tau, and traded 4 cases of beer, we could get a minigun, a Xeon light, which was some kind of big fancy light. We had no idea really what it was, and a starlight scope, which was, wow, that sounds like science fiction stuff. We can get all that for 4 cases of beer. We flew up there, got this stuff, brought it back, and then we had to take the helicopter back to get all special wiring, because we had no clue. It's kind of like we're just gonna plug things in and do stuff.
Depending on the missions we were flying, we had 2 systems. One was called the Firefly system, and one was called the Nighthawk system. The Firefly system consisted of a light cluster and a 50 caliber machine gun on the right side, and twin 60s with lights on the left side. Mission type was on the deck, fast, and it was great for waterway patrols, covering large patrol areas. The only issue with that system was you were vulnerable to ground fire. The Nighthawk system consisted of a starlight scope and a Xeon light and a minigun on the right side and a 50 caliber machine gun on the left side. Mission type for this would be 500 to 1,000 feet, slow flight, blacked out. I would observe the enemy on the starlight scope and then engage the enemy with the Xeon light and the minigun. We thought that the Firefly system was most effective because you're covering a large area and the delta was very flat, open terrain, rice paddies. So we could fly real fast, real low, and cover a large area. And with a 50 caliber, the enemy could not hide in bunkers because it would just penetrate 30 inches of dirt. So we found that very effective over the Nighthawk system.
We finally got the helicopter all fixed up and ready to go to replace Lucky Strike.
Given the night ship requirements, we needed a second door gunner.
The little jewel that we found was our own personal grunt.
And we heard that Wilkes was available.
If we ever went down, we'd be out there by ourselves. And we said, we got a grunt. We got to know somebody who knows how to operate on the ground.
Wilkes had come from the infantry, and we had talked many times about what would happen if at night we were shot down. How long it would take for another ship to get out there to us. We figured about an hour. And none of us were infantry trained. So we wanted Wilkes on our ship.
These guys had a good reputation in the company. They were highly regarded, and I was really happy to become part of the crew. I was flying with an air cavalry unit in the 1st Infantry Division, and I was an infantryman, and we flew combat assaults, which was basically jumping out of helicopters and attacking the enemy. My whole unit was transferred to Soc Trang, where 336 Assault Helicopter Company was stationed, and I was given the option of either transferring to another infantry unit or I could volunteer to become a door gunner. My choices were I could get shot at crawling around in the jungle with 40 pounds on my back and 95-degree heat, or I could volunteer to be a door gunner, get shot at flying around in a helicopter with a nice breeze blowing on me. So that seemed to be a no-brainer. I was flying combat assaults at that time, and because I had been in the infantry and familiar with the weapons, and a lot of the guys in the company were saying I was doing a good job as a door gunner, they decided that I would make a good fit for the final crew member.
It was a great ad because he was good with weapons and he had the infantry training as well.
And he gave us security.
So it was a great fit for the final member of the crew.
These guys were like at the top of the food chain. They were real warriors. They were going out looking for action. When I got back, there was no doubt in my mind that I knew we'd work well as a crew. I sat on the port side of the ship, which was, as the helicopter was moving forward, on the left-hand side. And that was opposite Feigl in Sandwich. Sandwich was a door gunner on a minigun, which could fire up to 6,000 rounds a minute. It was a 6-barrel Gatling gun. Feigl sat right next to him with the night detection device, a huge xenon searchlight. Just to give you an idea of the esteem and the clout those guys had, I didn't get assigned to Super Slick from higher up. They went to the platoon leader and told them I would be flying on Super Slick. So that's how that worked out. My weapon was a 50 caliber machine gun. The reason we got the 50 caliber machine gun, we had problems with the enemy taking cover in their bunkers. The rounds for the 60 machine guns and the minigun were just not heavy enough to penetrate their cover. So we found out the Navy had specialized ammunition, armor-piercing rounds and incendiary rounds. And we'd take stuff over to the Navy base in Bentui and trade the Navy guys for this ammunition. The incendiary rounds were really good for burning things down, and the armor-piercing rounds could penetrate 28 inches of dirt, so they weren't really safe in their bunkers any longer.
But you hear a Huey before you see it, and you can't really find it, and that's what would happen. They would low level in, bad guys didn't know where they were, all of a sudden the light would come on, and they'd be exposed, and they would take them under contact, and generally were killing a lot of people and doing a lot of damage.
The guns fired all the time, every time.
It's really important that we kept the guns operating, and most of the time we had a few extra parts that on the minigun There was one clip in the feeder delinker that might go bad, so I always had that. Wilkes always had at least one extra bolt for the M60.
We were always loaded up with grenades, various types, incendiary grenades, Willie Pete's, fragmentation grenades.
He always had some spare parts, which was important, because if we lost our firepower, we lost our edge, because that's what we did.
Come to find out that there was some requisitioning of extra parts that would happen at night, because sometimes the Army is like, they thought we own these, we don't want to let these guys go have these out, but sometimes we did midnight requisitions.
The door gunners were responsible for the weapons, cleaning the weapons, maintaining the weapons. We wanted to make sure those weapons every night were ready to go. So they would clean those weapons every single day. They'd break them down, clean them, and repair them. My responsibility as a crew chief was to work on that helicopter during the day to make sure that the thing was airworthy. So I would check bearings, I would check everything on the helicopter, replace, repair. Olson was the AC. He would come out during the day when we were working on the ship, and we would huddle and we would discuss the previous night's missions. We'd always be brainstorming new tactics to be used, in which system, the Firefly system or the Nighthawk system, would be used in those mission types. So we gelled, we'd work very well together as a team.
Nobody ever had to tell somebody what to do on the helicopter. Everybody knew what they had to do. And it was almost like we could read each other's minds.
It was solid, super slick.
When we were out there, nobody ever attacked the base. And nighttime was always a favorite attack time for the bad guys.
The most important thing was the fact that we trusted our pilot. We knew he had great skills, and the areas that we flew in, we knew that he would keep us safe. And a couple times, because he was such a good pilot, he did keep us alive, because there were some hairy situations out there where we could have been in the trees real easily. And because of his skills, we ended up coming home that night.
We were scrambling on a Soc Trang one night and told to fly north that one of our helicopters during a daytime combat assault mission had been shot down. En route, we heard that both pilots and crew chief were killed in the crash, and that the door gunner had received severe burns on his arms trying to rescue the pilot from the burning aircraft, unsuccessful.
The Vietnamese were in contact and were losing people, and they needed to resupply. So we picked up all the supplies as we headed out that way.
The Armans were engaged in a serious firefight, and it was expected that this fight would go on through the night.
We get a call on the radio and they said, "Do you see the burning helicopter?" I said, "By the way, I do. It's about 50 miles down there."
We could also see the exchange of tracer fire from one side to the other.
The other half of our platoon was still out there flying missions.
We came in over the friendlies with the burning ship to our right. We flew toward a strobe that one of the Armans had.
We couldn't land because we couldn't see what was there.
We came into the LZ, guided in by the strobe, and Olson pulled to a hover because of the terrain. We couldn't land the aircraft.
The two Toms were in the back, pitching out cases of ammo and everything else.
And of course, Olson's in my ear with that calming voice of his, just saying, "How we doing? How we doing?"
Once we got all the ammo out,
they brought the wounded, which I knew there would be. So they were lifting them up to me, and I was grabbing them under the arms and lifting them into the ship. I had lost count how many we actually pulled in that ship, but it was a lot. And as a matter of fact, the last few that we were pulling in, I would grab them under their arms and lift them into the helicopter, and I was actually falling onto the wounded that were already there. That's how many were in the ship.
it starts getting heavy. He said, "Okay, we've got enough."
I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he held that 3-foot hover as long as he did in that pitch darkness. But he did, and it's very difficult to do.
Because most of the times we flew, we were overloaded, and you need to climb because you can't see all the trees as you're going out, and so you have to have a little bit of power.
And Olson pulled that ship up to about a 10-foot hover and did a tail rotor 180, and we were out of there.
That's what we were doing. That's what you did. You didn't have to wait for someone to call. You knew that when things were happening.
And on the way out, we did receive fire. But the tracer fire was random. It wasn't directed at us. So we knew that they heard us probably, but they couldn't see us.
And I don't know how many wounded we hauled out of there and took them to the hospital.
For his actions that night, Olson was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross.
The most horrific mission that I went on because we knew that we had a missing helicopter.
June 23rd, we were scrambled out of Soc Trang.
We were chomping at the bit. We knew that we were probably the best equipped helicopter down there to start doing search and rescue.
They knew the general area where it was, but nobody knew exactly where it was.
It's getting almost dark, and we get the word to go, and we're thinking, wow, it's dark now. Now our job is twice as tough.
All of us were like pretty pumped that we might be able to, save these guys. And I can remember thinking, I wish the helicopter could fly faster so we could get there quicker.
We are all talking on the way out and saying, okay, we know that we're going to be looking for tops of trees that have been snapped off.
About that time, we came across the wreckage.
We found a tree that was snapped off.
We didn't at first go to the wreck. We made a few high-speed passes over the wreck, and then we did a quick recon of the area because we were worried about an ambush.
When we got to the crash site, it was a sight I'll never forget.
There's this big black hole, and then surrounding it are these tiny little craters, and in each crater is a body.
The wreckage and the bodies, there were 12 of them, were scattered over a large area.
This aircraft had actually had a mechanical failure. The blades went out of sync or balance, causing what was called mass bumping, and actually the blades separated from the aircraft, and it fell like a stone from probably around 1,500 feet.
It was a horrible sight. It was a sight like I haven't seen before.
We hovered over each body about 3 feet off the ground, checking for signs of life, but they were all dead.
We called in the medevac to come haul the bodies out because they were actually closer to their base than our base.
We had to fly back to Soc Trang to refuel.
We got them in there, they started doing the recovery. We went back home.
And we thought our mission was over as far as that went.
And then we were ordered to come back out again.
They lost the site. We had to go back out and find it.
And we had to go fly back out there again and rediscover, if you will, the wreck site, so I could fly cover for the medevacs.
None of us were feeling too good about coming back out there. I remember that, our normal adrenaline-fueled state of edginess was kind of non-existent.
And once we knew we had to go back out, it was almost like we were at a funeral.
Realizing we weren't going to be able to save them.
I felt very sad. I felt angry that these guys had served, and on their way home, something happens to the helicopter, that it just wasn't fair.
They brought the wreckage back to Soc Trang airfield and put it in a hangar, and they went through it like forensic. And they found that one of the weights inside the blade came loose and the blade disintegrated. That's what caused it. So what they did then is they put an airworthiness directive out to all helicopters to inspect blades. So a lot of the helicopter blades were replaced because of that crash.
That crash claimed 12 lives. We would find out later that 5 of the 12 victims were actually Navy SEALs on their way home.
We were all excited because we had planned a great 4th of July show for everybody.
Word got around, that we were going to do it, so everybody was out around the perimeter.
We had white phosphorus. We had everything that we could possibly have. We had a lot of hand flares.
We loaded up all the guns with straight tracers.
The most important thing to me is the top 100 songs were going to be played that night.
We flew around the airfield a few times.
We hadn't been in the air more than 10, 12 minutes.
We fired so many tracers that we completely burned out all the barrels on all the weapons.
We were test firing the guns.
And then we started throwing out cases of incendiary grenades, and they'd leave these long tails of sparks as they were flying to the ground. Everybody was down there cheering and yelling and going crazy. We heard about how cool it was for days. We probably cost the taxpayers like 50 grand for that show.
After that, that's when everything broke loose. And I remember Olson. That's the only time I was ever afraid flying with Olson, because he swung around. What do you mean you're hit? You're hit? And well, dumps the helicopter over, and we're coming into the tower because our little hospital was right alongside the tower. The tower keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and Olson's going too fast. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna die in the helicopter right at the tower in front of the hospital. I know Tom looked in the bottom of the aircraft, found no holes, but I had blood all over the bottom of the helicopter, and my knee hurt like the dickens. I don't know why my knee hurt, because I got shot in the leg, and it's still there. And these guys packed me into the hospital, and I just remembered laying there for a couple days after that, and that's when I called up and said, I need to come home.
Super Slick was actually disbanded in September 1970. All the crew members, Olson, myself, Wilkes, Samwith, we all went different ways.
I thought, that's it, I'll never see these guys again. It's ended. The end of story.
And what they did is they took the helicopter, the actual Super Slick helicopter, and disarmed it, and it became a regular Slick type helicopter. And it went back to being a Warrior ship, Warrior 2-1.
The actual nose cover was removed and claimed by the Soc Trang Airfield Air Controller. Its whereabouts to this day are unknown.
The night ship that replaced us was another Slick that had been converted to night. 2 weeks after we disbanded, that aircraft actually crashed, killing the pilot and crew chief. A ship was scrambled out of Soc Trang to rescue the door gunner and the co-pilot from the ship that went down, and to do the recovery of the bodies of the pilot and the crew chief. That ship was our old ship, Super Slick. On that ship was Wilkes. Wilkes helped in the recovery and the rescue of the crew of that ship that went down. His actions that night earned him the Army Commendation Medal for Valor.
I received an email from an author that was putting together a book about helicopter nose art. He was interested in our nose art, and he asked a few questions about the ship. One of the questions he asked was, what were the tail numbers, which was a serial number of a helicopter. I put him in touch with Tom, who had that information, and then the email came back to me that tail number was actually at a war memorial in West Virginia. And it was, disbelief. And just to know that Super Slick is still alive at a place of honor. For days, I was waiting to wake up from my dream. Just incredible.
The helicopter arrived in Fairmont at the memorial site. The people there thought it was a medevac, so they actually put the Red Cross on the doors. because they had no history of a helicopter. They didn't know what his mission was. It's a very fitting place for it to be at this memorial in West Virginia. It's earned that spot. It's interesting when you first see them. You don't know how to react. It's been so long. The brother you knew 40 years ago. A lot of thoughts will come back from that time of us together. Memorial Day in West Virginia, the crew is all coming back together again. Samwith will be flying in from Washington. Olson will be flying in from Texas. Wilkes will be coming in from Connecticut. And I'll be there from New York. The four of us arrive at the ship for the first time and walk down to that ship together, as we had done many, many times 40 years ago. I mean, the ship was our home.
That's it. And then
Well-
remember we added.
Yep,
remember
they were Lucky Strike.
We had that added a little bit later when we were flying.
This bird brought us through a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Remember,
Yeah, right here. Well, yeah, this
was gone.
This
Took that off.
was gone. Yeah, right in here. Well, I know. Well, that's where the mount was. That's where the mount was for the starlight scope you see on land. When we had the 1060s, you tried to have the 1060s. That really raised that.
Our actual tail number, our aircraft that we spent so much time in, survived. And these guys up here put our aircraft back together, put our nose art on it. That cost me $10 in downtown Soc Trang to have painted on there and point out some of the patches that are on there from the bullet holes. I guess it's very therapeutic. We'll see.
Fate, I believe, brought this crew together. Brought us together with that ship. Fate now brings us all back together with a ship some 40 years later.
Thank you for taking care of us.
Just felt so much pride knowing I got to fly with the crew that I flew with.
Never hesitated, ever, to complete the mission or do what we needed to do.
To me, it's just it's fate that brings us back together again.
given Super Slick is now part of the community in this small West Virginia town called Fairmont, we're very honored that they would invite us to participate in the Memorial Day Parade in Grafton, West Virginia. So we really felt proud about participating in that parade, and now being part of that community in West Virginia, this small town called Fairmont. The community was great to us. Myself and the crew feel that we're part of that community. We probably always will be, because that's where our ship is. Super Slick is there in that small town.
But Memorial Day is not for veterans. It's a day that we reserve for a select group of individuals. It's for those who have fallen in battle. It's a day for our honored dead. This is a day that we remember the best of our society, those who paid for freedom with their lives. This is a day for the fallen, our dead heroes. They were fathers and mothers, sisters or brothers, spouses, uncles and aunts, sometimes drafted, lately all volunteers. Their lives were cut short by their sacrifice, and we'll never know the impact that they might have had. West Virginia lost more men in Vietnam than any other state. So Memorial Day, it is a celebration of the sacrifice that they've made for us.
Super Slick had a real unique mission. It used to go out at night and fly over our airfield, providing protection to us on the ground. It was a guardian angel, if you will, making sure that we were safe. And not only did it provide protection to us in the airfield, it also flew all over the Delta doing the same thing. If an aircraft went down in the middle of the night, Super Slick went out, provided illumination and protection while the aircraft was recovered. If an outpost was hit or troops were in contact, Super Slick was called, providing illumination and breaking up the firefight with his powerful weapons. And as I sit here, I say to myself, God truly works in mysterious ways, and things come full circle. Because I look over there and I see those blades, and they look like wings. And she's back to being a guardian angel, protecting this hollow ground, providing cover for these brave men whose names are etched on the wall, doing what she was meant to do. And I thank you for allowing that to happen. And the crew thanks you for allowing that to happen. And God bless you, and God bless America.
Right, face, ready, aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire, left, face, breathe, and arms.
It's night outside the chapel at Soc Trang. A gentle wind stirs from the still airfield. We all wait for the chapel bell's last clang. It was from the heart, Amazing Grace we sang. Silence falls, the chaplain rises, our soul's shield. It's night outside the chapel at Soc Trang. We began the day not fearing war's fang. We had been wounded before, but we healed. We all wait for the chapel bell's last clang. Some worked, some slept, and idle Gidon did hang, while others flew and from Odin's blows reeled. It's night outside the chapel at Soc Trang. We've tasted it. We all know it. Fear's tang. Bitter and sweet, that fruit of the battlefield. We all wait for the chapel bell's last clang. For the crew we mourn, the chapel bell rang. Taps in the darkness, no tears concealed. It's night outside the chapel at Soc Trang. We all wait for the chapel bell's last clang.
We flew the mission, and as we went to get fuel, we found out, well, the bullet kind of caused some fuel leaks. So we just put in a little extra fuel, and we completed the mission, because that's what we did.
Tom was a stickler for keeping our helicopter spotless, and almost to a fault. And that didn't always set well with us. And one day Tom asked us to wax the helicopter. And we thought, wait a minute, are you kidding me? You want to wax the helicopter? And I'm looking at Wilkes, and Wilkes goes, no. We're not waxing this helicopter. And Tom goes, yes, we are, and here's the wax.
We were making the grenade runs, but we were low on the deck, and we were flying by pretty fast. So I could only get one grenade down on each pass. So as we were banking around to make another pass, I came up with a great idea. I'll put a grenade in each hand. That way I can get two down on each pass. So we came in on the next pass, got them both down perfect. One even went through the roof of a hooch. And we came around for the next pass, made the pass. I got the right one down. I threw the left one, and bang, it bounced off the skid and came up back towards the ship. And I stopped breathing for a couple seconds till it fell off to the side. And that was the last time I ever threw a grenade with my left hand. And I never told those guys that because they probably would have thrown me off the ship.
We flew in that helicopter every single night. And a lot of nights were routine, but a lot of nights weren't routine. And that ship went through a lot of firefights. So we rode this ship into battle many, many times. So there's a bond that forms between yourself and that aircraft and the systems on that aircraft. It's an everlasting bond between a crew chief and a helicopter. It's something that crew chiefs understand.